Hi everyone and welcome. We're really excited to have you here today. In this session, we're going to dive into all the new features in Accolm BAM version 7. There's a lot of great stuff packed into it, and we can't wait to walk you through BAM. Now, we also know life happens. If you need to step away before we wrap it up, not a problem at all. We'll send you the recording by email, and you'll also be able to catch it later on LinkedIn or YouTube. So with that said, let's get started. That's me on the screen. I'm Rickard Persson, Technical Pre-Sales Specialist here at Accolm. I've been working with BAM and MFT solutions for a few years, and I'm really looking forward to showing you what we've added so far in BAM version 7. Here's today's agenda. What is new in BAM version 7, where we will be talking about all of the new features. Demonstration of the new features. We'll show you the majority of the new features. Questions and answers, where you can ask any and all of your questions. All right, to fire things off on what's new in BAM version 7, we've changed the application from 32-bit to 64, giving you more memory to play with and faster performance potential. We've added support for SMB version 2 and 3. We obviously want to follow the more modern and secure and efficient versions of the SMB protocol. You can now use PostgreSQL databases for your BAM instance. We always recommend companies to mirror their BAM setup after their MFT setup, so adding PostgreSQL gives more companies the option to do that. In addition, if you run PostgreSQL database on your Go Anywhere server, BAM will be able to connect to that database as well in version 7. Huge one, SSO using SAML authentication. Anyone who has spoken to me before knows that I always talk about quality of life additions, and this is definitely one of those. Another one that we've had many discussions about with our customers is the ability to add MFT Database archives. Really looking forward to showing you how that works. We added the ability to create nested business units, giving you the opportunity to create more layers in BAM and really sculpt the business units to mirror your organization. The final one on this page, yes, there are more pages with goodies, is that we've created unique transactions pages for participants, business processes, and business units. We've added 2 more widgets, transactions by environment and transactions by nodes. We have clickable participants on the transactions page, so instead of filtering around, we click on the sender or receiver and we will be sent directly to the participants page. We've added the ability to associate AS2 IDs to participants. You can now specify the order of the multiple recipient list on the transactions page. Previously it was only action time, but now we can order by business value as well. We also have a few new filters on the transactions page, filter by folder and filter by file size. On the last page, we've got a new report, transactions by business units, and a nifty quality of life improvement by adding a status filter on the report all logins page. You can now export your unprocessed files report to CSV and subscribe to different subfolders or all folders for your unprocessed files. We've added a pop-up notification for when an SLA warning is triggered. We changed auto-provisioning where you can specify which site or domain should be auto-provisioned. You can now enable or disable your different authentication sources. And lastly, but not least, we've added a sent date column for workspaces transactions. Those are all the features that we've packed so far in version 7. Let's move on to the demo section of the webinar and take a look at these features in BAM. All right, so on the login page, we can already see one of our main features in BAM 7, SAML SSO. For those of you that are not familiar with it, SSO stands for single sign-on, and when you do SSO, you sign in once to an IDP, so an identity provider, which is the system that contains the information about the users. And after that, you can use the login token to access all applications that use the same IDP for authentication without having to authenticate again. So if your company is already doing SSO with SAML, you can now use that to log in to BAM. BAM is going to fit right into the login process you already use while keeping things both simpler and safer. I know a bunch of our customers have been waiting for this, So let's go ahead and try it out. So we'll just hit the login button, and as you can see, it's a one-click solution, and we're now inside of BAM. Now, how do we configure this to make it happen in BAM? So the first thing that we would do is to move over to the security page. This is where we have all of the authentication options. So we have BAM authentication, Active Directory, LDAP, and now we have SAML. Now, we have a few things that we need to do before this works, obviously. Firstly, we need to tell BAM where the IDP is. So we need to import the metadata. This metadata is from the IDP. It is important to understand, and actually it is important to notice that we don't manually input anything in here, right? So this is a way for us to avoid any configuration issues. We know that over an LDAP and AD, for example, we need to input this information manually. But in this case, we get the metadata directly from our IDP. Once we've imported this, we go over to the service provider. Over here, we will now have to input specific settings for the SAML service provider. Now we input the entity ID, right, who we are. We need a P12 certificate, input the password if you have one. Then we have a few options down here. Required signed response, required signed assertion, required encryption assertion, force authentication, and then at the bottom we have SSO response URL. Now we need to figure this one out before. So once we have input all of this information, we hit save. This is still changeable. And how we do that is if I head over here to the global settings. Now remember, when you installed BAM for the first time, what you needed to do very early on was to go to general settings and then update your base URL. This is going to be the redirect in this case, right? So we need to make sure that this doesn't say localhost anymore. That is not going to work. So back to security. So on the SAML again and the service provider tab, we have now made sure that all of this information is correct. We again save and we export the metadata and we send this information to the authentication team. Let's call them that for now. Once all this is said and done, and this is correct, we can now enable SAML over here. Now we are not entirely done yet. We need to go to groups and remember that over here we input all of our different groups, and we can see over here in the middle that we have SAML groups, right? So we need to point BAM to the different SAML groups we have. Once that is said and done, and these users that want to authenticate to BAM exists in these groups, they can now log in and see the information that they're supposed to see. Moving on, we've added the ability to connect an archived MFT database in BAM. The explanation here is very long, so bear with me on this one. This is a really important feature that would make managing your MFT a lot easier. We spent a lot of time thinking through this because it solves some really challenging issues. Running MFT means your MFT database keeps growing every day, and if you are doing a lot of transfers, your database starts growing exponentially within a few days or weeks. And this is a good sign, because it probably means that you're doing a lot of business. However, the MFT servers do not work very well with very large databases, and the MFT vendors recommend that you keep your MFT database to a manageable size, so when your database grows, beyond a certain size, of course, you would start needing to purge it, right? So when your database starts to grow beyond a certain size, you would need to purge it to keep things small. This results in some companies having to purge and leave data for only 1, 2, or possibly 3 months. Unfortunately, this does not work for all companies because you might have business, legal, or regulatory requirements that stipulates that you need to keep MFT data for much longer than 3 months. Some requirements mandate keeping data for many, many years. So as an MFT admin, you're stuck between purging and losing data or exporting data into files that are hard to use later. That is why we built the MFT DB archive feature in BAM. With this feature, you can create database archives of your MFT data instead of purging or exporting it to a file. For example, you could archive data by year, 2023, 2024, and so on, and then use those archives in BAM. The archives are seamlessly integrated in BAM, and apart from the admin telling BAM about the archives, your users do not need to do anything special to access the data in the archive. They would go about searching and filtering as normal, and BAM would automatically search in the live database as well as all of the different archives. This results in you keeping your live database lean and fast. It's the balance between vendor guidance and business requirements. The beauty with this is if you get to 2028 and you do not need the archive for 2022 anymore, all you need to do is to go into BAM and remove the 2022 archive. So how do we set this up? Let's take a look in BAM. All right, so if I move over to the admin section and MFT environments, you're gonna notice two new tabs over here. So under environments, we have list environments, add environment, and then the two new ones, list archives and add archive. Let's go to the add archive, and first thing that we need to notice is that these archives that we will be adding, they are connected to an existing live database that we've already connected to. So we have MFT Prod 1, MFT Prod 2. So if we pick the first one, I'm not going to add it, but we need to add a name. It understands which MFT server we're talking about, where the data, what kind of database type it is, host address, port number, name of the database username and database password, and that's it. Once we've tested it and it's green, we can add it. It's going to end up here, and as we can see, we have an environment that is connected, and this is the archive name. Now, we're going to take a look at how this is being presented in BAM, and we're talking about this being seamless, right? That your user would hardly notice. And I say hardly because there is a little teeny weeny bit of a difference. If we go to transactions all then, and now I am purging everything that is older than August. That means we're going to check the dates in between July and August. So if we do this, the 31st of July, and we'll take the 1st of August. And I'm going to narrow it down as much as I can, because obviously we want it to show up on one page. Do that, and then we do the, let's do that one. We hit apply. So what we're going to notice on this page now is that over here we have a cutoff point, right? Where this is July and this is August. And we see an icon over here that indicates that this is archived information. That means that our current live database is only data from August and onwards. So we can keep the size of the database fairly small, but at the end of the day, right, the result for the search that I did, I wouldn't notice any specific difference. It's still giving me this result that I'm expecting. So as a user, it is extremely seamless, to be honest. Next up is nested business units. In BAM, the idea with business units is that you're supposed to be able to mirror your organization. The challenge until now has been that you couldn't nest those business units together, and without that, you had to decide on which structural level you would set your business units at. With nesting, it becomes much easier to reflect your real organizational structure, so each department can see the data that's relevant to them, while IT keeps clean control over permission. The easiest way to explain is with a global company as an example. The company operates across different regions, so Europe, the Americas, Asia, and Africa. Each region has subdivisions, so Nordics and Benelux as the other examples. Each subdivision contains countries, and sticking to Nordics, we're talking about Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and so on. Now, data and access is then tailored to users' level. So country level users, Sweden, for example, they would only see Swedish data. Subdivisions level, like in Nordics, would see only Nordic countries and all of that data. Region level would be Europe, and again, seeing all subdivisions, all countries within Europe, and then on the final level, we have global, which is going to see everything across all regions, subdivisions, and countries. Now, to make it a lot more simpler as an example, we could stick to finance and say that within finance, we have two different subunits, accounting and auditing as examples. So the people at accounting are going to see the data for accounting, auditing for auditing, and finance sees both of them. How is that presented in BAM? Let's go over to the business units configuration. We have the sort of standard business units that we always have. So credits, finance, HR, logistics, operations, and payments. But specifically, we're looking at payments, credits, and finance. So finance would be that upper level, right? And then you have subunits, credits, and payments. And we want to nest them into finance. So we configure credits, we configure payments. Everyone gets to see what they're supposed to see. We go to finance then, and we add the business units, payments and credits, to finance. So now from this configuration, it's very simple. Anything for payments, anything for credits, the finance manager is going to see, as an example. And how is that presented in BAM then? Let's go over to the business units and check all business units. And I am a very simple person. In this case, if we go to finance, so we're going to see everything. So we can see over here, we see credits and we see payments. I go to business units, all business units. We go to credits, and you guessed it right, credits is going to see credits files. If I go to business units again and I go to payments, payments is going to show me payments files. So at the end of the day, depending on what unit I'm a part of, everyone gets to see what they're supposed to see. Credits, credits, payments, payments, finance, both of them. The next feature we'll explore is the introduction of dedicated transactions pages for participants, business processes, and business units. At first glance, the change may appear subtle, but it brings a significant improvement under the hood. So let me show you what. Well, I wouldn't be able to show you exactly what you saw previously in 6, but for you all that are still using 6, you're going to know what I'm talking about. So when I drill down on a participant, let's do any of them, right? So in version 6, when I clicked clothing chain as an example, what happened essentially was that I would be sent to a transactions all page, but it would have filtered with sender and receiver and clothing chain. That is fine. That works just fine. The problem is that when you start doing these different searches, right? You start to add filters. And then you realize that, oops, I need to reset this. When you hit the reset button, you would then end up on the transactions all page, and you would have to redo what you just did. I mean, every step. So adding the sender and receiver and so on. So this is one of the major points with this new edition, is that we have a unique page, right? So if I do filter on this page and I hit reset, well, I'm still on clothing chain UK. I'm nowhere else. The same goes for our business process. The same goes for the business units, right? So it makes life a whole lot easier. And also when we've set this up, we can also make sure to maximize the filters, for example, for efficiency, so that you have filters that are specific for a participant filter, so to speak. If we go to the transactions all page, we're going to see that we have a bunch more filters, right? And a little bit of a sneak preview of what we're going to see later on. So the 4 features we've looked at so far are the major additions in BAM version 7. SAML authentication, archived MFT DB, nested business units, and the unique transactions pages. We're back on the dashboard, and we're going to briefly take a look at 2 new dashboard widgets that we've added. So if we do customize dashboard, one of them is transactions by environments. Essentially, it's going to show me how many transactions occur on the different environments. So we have 560 on MFT Prod 1 and 427 on MFT Prod 2. Now, if I remove this just to keep it clean, I want to show you the other one. By the other one, I'm talking about the transactions by nodes. So I need to drill down on one instance. Do yes. I do customize dashboard. And we have down here one called transactions by node. And as we can see, it's grayed out. That means that it's already on the dashboard. So if I scroll down, and to be honest, this isn't the best of demos for this specific widget, but I guess you'd have to trust me on this one, that if you have multiple nodes, you're going to see multiple pillars over here, kind of like the top 5 participants connections and top 5 participants data transfer, right? But this would do for now. Now, as a final thing about widgets, as we always mention, we are always eager to listen in on new ideas for widgets. So, I mean, we've probably added a few during my time at Accolm, but it's important that you tell us about the widgets that you want us to add. And then we will obviously, if it's possible, prioritize it and get it for you. All right, so we're done on the dashboard and we're back on the transaction solve page. So something that you'll notice very quickly on this page is that we've added the ability to drill down into sender and receiver. And I mean, this is a time saver to say the least. So if I wanted to, I could go back and I could do the filtering. So I could click the participants and all of the different participants that we have over here. Or now I can click directly in here as well. So I can click partner bank if I wanted to have all of the information for that specific participant, right? And this saves us a bunch of time as well. Now, apart from that, I also want to highlight that we still have a few customers who still do, let's call them old schoolers, that still do the old filtering, right? That do sender and receiver and filter by that. And I mean, that still works. It's all right to use that. However, I think with this new feature, a new addition, it'll give you an incentive to, I guess, work a little bit more efficiently. So no need to go over here. We can just click the participant that we want to look into. We also added 2 new filters. We have filter by folder and filter by file size. Now, the reasoning behind folder is that you could have a business user that is monitoring a specific folder for incoming and outgoing files. So it could be some sort of trading folder with their partner. Now, it is quite tricky if you have multiple jobs or event rules that are sending and receiving files in that folder. So what you can do essentially is to do a folder search in BAM, and you can track what's happening in that folder. So if I just pick, I guess I'll do the private bank over here and do more details. And I mean, it's a fairly small example that we're going to fetch, but we're just going to pick a folder. I guess you could pick a larger path as well if you'd like. I do folder filter, paste it, checking for spaces, hit apply. And as you can see, everything that goes in and out of this folder is going to end up on the search over here. Let's remove this one and reset filter. The other filter that I wanted to show you was the one for file size. And I mean, filtering by file size, in my opinion, could be about spotting exceptions. Maybe your files are usually around a certain size, right? And if one comes in a much smaller or larger size, it could be missing data, it could be wrong type of content, and so on. You wouldn't know. So by filtering this way, you can focus only on files that fall outside of the normal pattern. So issues would be a lot easier to detect. And I mean, in my example, I wouldn't really be looking at that, but just going to show you the options. So we have the conditions over here with exactly, less than, greater than, and between. I'm going to do less than 5 bytes. We hit apply, and now we're going to see that all of the files that are populating in this list are less than 5 bytes. And if I change it to greater than 5 bytes, and I guess you guessed it, we're going to get files larger than 5 bytes, right? And these are very simple filters to use and good additions. We added the ability to associate AS2 IDs with a participant. AS2 is a protocol that companies use to transfer files directly and securely between systems. It works by encrypting the file, sending it over HTTPS, and then generating a signed receipt back to the sender once the file is delivered. Now, the receipt isn't just an acknowledgement, it's cryptographic proof that the file arrived intact and on time. The benefits with this kind of setup using AS2 is that you don't need any intermediate mailbox or manual handling. Files go straight from one system to another, end to end, with guaranteed security and traceability. That's why it's quite common actually within industries where partners needs absolute certainty that documents like purchase orders or invoices were delivered successfully and on time. So I'll show you an example. If we go to AS2, we have 2 small transfers. Now it's already been associated, so I'm going to remove it and then add it again. So we see secret agency over here. I click the date. I do more details. I pick the AS2 MDN. Now in here, we have the AS2 to and AS2 from, right? And I already know that this is my server. So I'm going to pick this partner AS2 ID. We close this window. I go to participants. Let's see here. We scroll to secret agency. I do AS2, delete, close. We go back to the AS2 transactions list because I want to show you now I've unassociated, right? We don't see secret agency anymore. I go back to participants. I find the participants who was secret agency. We hit edit. We do AS2. We add it. Paste the AS2 ID. Close. Close. Back to the transaction list for AS2. And let's take a look. So now again, we've associated the AS2 ID to the participant secret agency. Last but not least on the transactions page, we have one more addition, and that is that we have added the ability to prioritize and order multiple receivers in a transaction based on the business value of the participant. So what am I actually talking about? We see one icon on this page, and that is over here, right? For multiple file abc.zip. Now this has multiple receivers, accounting, marketing, and sales. So originally this is actually right now based on action time, but I can change this priority to be based on business value instead, because we want those most crucial information first. So if I scroll over to participants, I know these are applications, so I'll do all applications. And we can see that out of all of them, sales is business critical, the other ones are normal. And we don't really need to look at any other details on this page. What I can do then is I can go to global settings, and I can go to transactions page, and I can choose multiple receiver listing order and change it to business value. I hit save. Go back to the transactions all page, and now that transaction has changed. Let's see. If I scroll down, I can see that the listing has now changed, that sales is at the top, and then accounting and marketing. So it's changed the ordering. All right, so we've covered the features we've added to the transactions page, and those were these clickable participants. We had the AS2 ID association. We had the change of priority in the listings. And then also we had the 2 filters, right? We have added a new report as well as a very small quality of life addition to another report. So the new report is transactions by business units. And I mean, this makes sense, right? We added nested business units. So we're expecting you all to be adding more business units into BAM, which essentially then means that it would be beneficial to have transactions by business units so that we can see all of our different business units and the amount of transactions that they have. That quality of life addition that we were talking about is if I go to authentications and do all logins, I'm just going to freeze for a second here. Want to highlight that we have 3 different pages: all logins, fail logins, and successful logins. Now I'm going to generally go to all logins, right? Because I want to check. And if I see something, perhaps there's some sort of malicious connection attempts, we would see some failures over here, and I'm going to think, okay, so there's something going on here perhaps. What I would be forced to do before is to go to reports, authentications, and do failed logins. Now we've just added this teeny weeny bit of feature that you can now do status instead, do the drop down list and click failed instead, right? Hit apply, and we can now see all the failed logins. A feature we are very proud of that we always want to improve is unprocessed files. Unprocessed files is something we've implemented which goes beyond the limitations of the MFTDB. As we all know, BAM reads the MFTDB to populate the dashboard with information. However, unprocessed files work differently. Unprocessed files is used to help monitor important file transfer folders for any file that may be stuck in transit, for whatever reason that may be. Perhaps there was a connectivity issue and the process never finished. Now, for those of you who do not know what this is, we're going to do a quick recap, right? So on the administration menu, we have the MFT environments, and we are under the tab unprocessed files. This is where we can add all of the directories that we want to monitor. So it could be a network share. It could also be locally. So it could be mounted on the BAM server, for example. We set an alias, we set the path. We can include subfolders, and I've had conversations with customers about this, and they'd be a little bit worried, but since, well, I guess they are imagining thousands of these unprocessed files folders, but you can at least include subdirectories as well. So you might save yourself a little bit of time. Then we have threshold, which is essentially how old are the files supposed to be before you get a notification. And then we input a username and password, right? And once these are done, I'll go back to list directories. Their directors will be visible over here. We then have a report. This is an admin report, which is important to notice for one of the features that we're going to look at. So we do unprocessed files. So this is where we get our report. And we get a notification up here when a unprocessed file has been detected. Now, for the new additions to unprocessed files, we have a CSV report that we can pull for this information. It could be all directories or it could be a specific directory, right? So if I click the CSV report, it's going to see that it's preparing a download. I hit download because it's ready, and I'm going to have to pull it. Yeah, it's downloaded. I just need to go to my second monitor here and open up that download. Double click it, hold on, and we do OK. So this is the result that we would have, right? Not much more to it. The other addition, or the other feature, I guess, is that we can subscribe to these folders. And what does that mean? So, firstly, highlighting again, this is an admin report. That means that we cannot subscribe from the viewer section. Remember that. There's this viewer subscription, and then over here we have admin subscriptions. Really, the biggest difference is that you can subscribe for your viewers from the admin subscriptions. So we now have unprocessed files. We input the name, the directory, the expiration date. We can choose our subscriber users. We can choose subscriber business units, and we can also add email addresses. And this is pretty good, right? Because then we can actually add our partners here. If we want to send them information that you still haven't picked up the file yet that we have placed for you. So we can now do this in BAM as well. And by the way, when we're talking about directory, just going back, it's either all directories or specific directories. A very simple feature is that we added a pop-up notification for when an SLA warning has been detected. Now, SLA is one of the most important features we have in BAM. We need to be able to track our most critical file transfers and have alarms connected to them so that we can detect any possible failures as quickly as possible. SLA warning is an addition to that feature, which will give you the option to get a notification before the SLA has failed. So I am expecting an important file at 3 p.m. I can set the SLA warning an hour before, and BAM will send me an email and tell me that the process has not yet been completed, giving me the opportunity to work proactively. And this is a classic for me, is that someone from business is going to ask me, why are you only reacting once it's failed? Right? And I have thousands of processes that I need to track, so it's impossible. So we need to have this security with all of these alarms and messages and so on. So Just a quick recap. If we go over to the SLAs, we see the warning over here, by the way. So this is the latest edition, this pop-up notification. But I'm going to go to SLAs. We're going to go to create new SLA, and then we can just input the information that we need. So the SLA name, which participant, which chose participants, the transaction directory, file names if that's needed, expected number of files, so we can choose any of these options. We do transaction status, frequency, expected time, let's just say by 15:17, and then we add that warning, right? So 1 hour ahead. And once that occurs, and if you've subscribed to the SLA, I'll get that message. Now, one of the, not really a downside, but rather an extra coverage is that if I am working inside of BAM, maybe I'm troubleshooting something, right? Then I'll get an email with an SLA warning. But since I'm not watching my email right now, I'm busy doing something else in BAM, then having this pop-up notification up here will help me a bunch, right? So I just click view and I'll get the information that this SLA is currently on warning status. I drill down on this SLA and I will get the information that I'm looking for that is required for this to be a success. And I can work on it and make sure that it's sorted ahead of failure. Next up, we've made a bit of a change up on how auto-provisioning works in BAM. Auto-provisioning is a big quality of life feature for our customers. It helps save everyone a bunch of time when it comes to configuring your user accounts on the MFT. So instead of us having to manually add all of these user accounts or web users, we can simply tell BAM to fetch all of them and create participants for them. Now, there was a small catch to this, and that was that it was an all or nothing option, right? So if I go to the auto provision page and we're gonna remove this, so in version 6, we only saw this over here, right? And then once we enabled auto provisioning, it would pick everything. Now with version 7, we can choose which sites or domains we want to auto provision as well. So if we have testing sites or dev sites or specific sites or domains for any other reason, and we just want our main default site, then we can choose that one and we can hit save. So it's going to auto provision these two, but not the demos one. So this is, it sort of evolved, right? From this all or nothing to the point where we can now choose site or domain. Lastly, we've got a very cheeky little feature, which is very simple to demonstrate. So on the administration and security page, we have our authentication sources: BAM authentication, AD, LDAP, and SAML. Now, what I want to highlight is simply that we can now enable or disable these different authentication sources, right? So enable or disable, can enable or disable over here, and there could be many different reasons. There's some slowness or there's some issue with your AD, then disable it and make sure that your business users use the BAM authentication for now until the AD is sorted. So very simple and very straightforward. And I think that is it for the demonstration part of this webinar. So I'll go ahead and I'll start the QA from here. All right, so to summarize what's new in BAM version 7, we upgraded the application to 64-bit. We support SMB version 2 and 3. PostgreSQL database have been added for both BAM and Go Anywhere, so we support those as well. SAML authentication, MFT Database archives, nested business units, unique transactions pages. Then we had the 2 new widgets, transactions by environments and nodes, clickable sender and receiver on transactions page, associate AS2 ID to participant, specify multiple recipient list order on the transactions page, 2 new filters, filter by folder and filter by file size. We have that new report for business units transactions. We added that little status filter for report all logins page. We can export unprocessed files report to CSV, create subscriptions for unprocessed files. So remember, all of the unprocessed files are just a single folder. Pop-out notifications for when an SLA warning is triggered. Auto provisioning where we change it so that you can specify site or domain, enable or disable authentication sources, and lastly, send date column for workspace transactions. And just skipping to the last page, I would like to thank you all for joining. As mentioned at the start, we will upload the recording to our YouTube and LinkedIn page. If you have any questions or want our assistance, kindly send us an email to support@accolm.com. It could be upgrade assistance, best practices questions, or just general configurations assistance. That's any of them, right? And we want to make sure that you get the best out of our product, and we try to be as available as we can for all of you. Have a nice Thursday, everyone.